don't look back. There is an author by the name of Naim Akbar. Dr. Akbar wrote a book titled The Psychological Chains. And basically, it was called Breaking the Chains of Psychological Slavery. And in this book, he contends that you can be in a place for so long that even when you're out of the place, you're still in the place. In other words, your mind is at a place that you are contained. And even though you've moved from the physical location, your mind is still trapped in that place. But I want to say to you that if we are going to put our hands on the plow and reach our potential, reach our designed destinies, we must break the chain of psychological slavery. Many of us are plagued by this psychological chain. Dr. Abba contends that this chain is a slavery type bondage. And in other words, it conditions the mind so much that you remain in slavery even after you're out of slavery. In other words, you are stuck in a place that you cannot get out. It's so ingrained in your mind that throughout the years, it continues to control you. In fact, it's nearly impossible for you not to look back when you're trying to go forward because of this psychological slavery. He surmised that whatever that has you in bondage, it keeps your mind locked in even when your body is gone. In other words, while it is finished with you, you're not finished with it. It has released you, but you can't release it. In other words, let me put it this way. If you've been a product of a continuous relationship of abusiveness, what happens is that when the abuse has left you, you still hold on to the abuse. In other words, it has your mind. And sometimes it goes to a place that because of the kind of relationship you've been in, of this person abusing you all the time, you think it's the norm. What happens then is this, Dr. Jackson, is that when you find somebody who does not abuse you, you think something's wrong with them because they treat you like you should be treated. Because you're so stuck in this mind thing, you're so stuck in this psychology, you're so stuck in this place that says abuse is normal. In fact, what happens sometimes after God removes you from it, what happens is that instead of thanking God for removing you, you ask the God to return you because you're missing it. This type of bondage continue to draw you back to the place you left. You've left this place. And the fact is that many of us have experienced that kind of situation. It's finished with us, but we're not finished with it. Why? Because our actions suggest otherwise. We are haunted by the bruises that we have. We are haunted by those scars and the residual impact on our hearts and in our mind that continues to remind us of the bondage. The problem is that we've been in this bondage for so long that it's a part of our lifestyle. It's a part of who we are. We cannot release it when it releases us. And so, therefore, in the same light, we have people who have ascribed to departing from dead people. They want to leave dead churches. They want to leave dead tradition. But they feel obligated to the slavery of their past. They were so wrapped up into those dead conditions that they don't know how to leave the dead because they think it's unfinished business. No, it's not unfinished business. The business is finished with you. The challenge is God is trying to propel you to something new, but you want to hold on to the old. They're stuck in the way that they used to do. They're stuck in the way they used to do things. They're stuck in the way that it used to be. They're stuck in the way it was. But can I tell you, the way it was is not the way it is today. We have to learn that in this journey, we cannot keep battling with our past. And we cannot keep holding on to that thing that desired to keep us in bondage. I know it was good at that time, but at the time it was good. The challenge is now it's no good for you. Things we've left behind physically, yet they hold on to us mentally. It's evident because Jesus talks about this in his text, but he says it a different way. He speaks to these men, and each of these men provide an excuse as to why they can't follow him. They can't move forward because they keep looking behind. Can I tell you, it's time to stop looking behind. Can I also tell you that you right now, can I tell you really, can I really tell you this? Understand what I'm saying. You are in the right place at the right time for the right blessing from God. The challenge is you got to leave what you left behind and let it stay where it is. Because you can't get what God has for you here if you keep holding on to what you left back there. I'm trying to help somebody. Because the remnants of your past haunts your praise. It haunts your worship. Because while you're in a place that God wants you to praise, you think about the place you left from. And you can't praise because your mind, instead of being on God, is on something else. You've got to leave and stop looking back. Because the challenge is, this is what really has happened. I think about the children of Israel walking around in circles, and once they get to the promised land, they're not satisfied. But can I tell you this? Sometimes the place in which you were at, the lease has expired.
All right.
You've been evicted. So why are you still trying to pay rent to a place that don't want you? Tradition has evicted you because your mind says, I need to move forward. I need to do something different. But you're still trying to pay homage, pay dues to something that can't help you anymore because it's gotten rid of you. You're no longer there. You've outgrown that. But your condition of your mind says, I have to stay. Can I help you? You've got to walk away from that and stop looking back.
Go ahead, Pastor.
Because you're now in a place you can be healed. And the challenge is you can't continue to be satisfied with sickness when you can be healed. You can't continue to be satisfied with poverty when you can be prosperous. You can't continue to be satisfied with mediocre when you can have the best. You can't continue to be stuck in a place that you can't move when you can fly. Can I tell you, why would I want to take a stagecoach to California when I can get on a Learjet? You've got to let the old stuff stay, because what happens is you're so wrapped up in the past that you keep looking back. So Jesus is talking to them, and he said, you're in a place of freedom, but yet still you prefer to be a slave. It's difficult to put your hands on the plow when you're consumed by what used to be. You're afraid of what's happening now. And the reason you're afraid is because you've been faking it, and now it's time for you to make it real, and you can't do it. You've been a public success while you've always been a private failure. You've been pretending because even though you look good outside, you're still stuck back here somewhere. Paul says it this way. This is one thing I do. Forgetting the things which are behind and reaching forth for the things which are before me. In fact, the rich ruler said to Jesus, what must I do to inherit heaven? Jesus said, sell all your belongings and follow me. There's a problem there, because when it comes down to getting rid of that stuff that's holding you back to follow Jesus, you don't want to do that. You want to hold on to that. He's trying to tell you that if you let go of the old stuff, I got some new stuff for you. And the new stuff is better than the stuff you got. It's hard to get rid of that stuff. In other words, it's hard to follow Jesus when you can't see where he's going. So then Paul lets us know that there's a cost to follow Jesus. But can I tell you, looking back can be a tragedy. So the first question is, what are you looking back from? And then what are you looking back for? Because if what's in front of you is better than what's behind you, why are you looking away from what's good to what you've already seen? I wish I had some help in here. Because every now and then, watch this now, I'm guilty that we hear music of the past. And that music brings us back to places we used to be. It helps us to reminisce of some good things and some good times. But the truth of the matter is those good things are gone. It's good to reminisce, but you can't stay there, because if you stay there, you get lost there, and you're going to miss what God has in the future. In other words, you can deny your future by holding on to your past. Every now and then, you got to look at your past, but let your past go. Don't keep looking back at what used to be when God has something for you now. Amen. So then, He said, if you put your hand on the plow, don't look back. In other words, if you do that, you can get out of the mess because what's in front of you is unprecedented favor. In fact, can I hit a little more? Watch this. I believe that this psychological slavery is just that, and it keeps you in a place because the enemy don't want you to get what God has for you. And so while he can't stop you from going where God is trying to take you, he keeps reminding you of what has happened in the past, that every time you want to take a step forward, he reminds you of it and it pulls you back. Because he can't do it, so he calls you to do it yourself. But if we're going to go forward, Jesus said this: no one puts his hand on the plow and look back is fit for the kingdom of God. The question is, why do you put your hand on the plow in the first place? What is the reason you put your hand on the plow? You put your hand on the plow for a couple of reasons. One reason you put your hand on the plow is so that you can cultivate the dirt. You put your hand on the plow so you can create a track, so you can sow seed. You put your hand on the plow so that you can guide the mule and not let the mule guide you. You put the hand on the plow so you can break up the hard ground so you can make it soft again. You put your hand on the plow because you want to loosen up the dirt around you. You want to till the soil so you can sow seed. You cannot sow seed in hard ground. That's why you need a plow. And Jesus said, if you put your hand on the plow and look back, you're not fit for the kingdom of heaven. Why did he say such a thing? Because watch this, plowing also create a place, not just for the sower, but when you plow the rows, it puts space in between them so that the reapers can harvest without being on top of everything. In other words, every now and then you got to put your hand on the plow so you can go forward and you can see straight ahead. Now, I'm trying to go somewhere. Just wait a little bit. Watch this now. Here's the challenge. If I look behind and then look in front of me, and I can see the same space that was in front of me, and I look behind me and see the same space behind me that's really in front of me, then it's telling me that I haven't moved anywhere. Or I've gone around in circles. And so therefore I'm not moving forward because everything seemed to be the same. Can I also tell you that going around in circles is just as bad as standing still? Being stagnated. But if you want to look back, if you want to continue to go in circles, then you don't need to put your hand on the plow. Because if you hold on to the plow anyway and don't guide the mule's going to pull you. And so you got to hold the plow just to keep up. But if you want to look behind you, you got to be concerned, because whatever it is that calls you to keep looking behind is drawing you back. Right. And if it's drawing you back, you can't go forward to what God has. Can I tell you that if you follow Jesus, while you may not know what's ahead of you, it's surely better than what's behind you. And I guarantee you that whatever you get in front of you is going to be better than what you left behind you. Because if you follow Jesus while you can't see it, somebody talk about faith. That's why faith is the something things hoped for, the evidence things not seen. You can't see it, but because Jesus is with it, you know it's something that's going to be good. And I looked at this thing and I began to ask myself these questions because I was somewhat intrigued with looking back. And I was intrigued with the response that Jesus gave the two men. And so I began to explore and to find out what was he talking about. I looked at this thing and as you look at it from a farmer's perspective, when you plow, looking ahead is key to having straight rows. But if you look back, you have the tendency for the rows to run into each other. Jesus says, if you look back, you're not fit for the kingdom of heaven. Jesus says, if you look back, you're not fit for what's in front of you. If you're more concerned about how things are behind, if you're more concerned about holding on to your past than what lies ahead of you, then you're not fit to handle what I have for you. You're not ready for it. You know, I put a pin here. This is why, while God has predestined some things for you, they may be for you, but you may never get them. And the reason you never get them is because you never get ready for them. Because you're not prepared. Because you're still stuck where you live. You got to move forward in the Spirit of God to receive what God has for you. But if you have enough faith to look ahead, your future will straighten out your past.
Amen.
God help me. And if you concentrate on where you're going, you don't have to worry about where you're coming from. Oh, God, let me say it again. If you focus on what's ahead of you, you don't have time to worry about what's behind you. You got to look forward and don't worry about what's behind you, because what's coming behind you has no bearing on where you're going except what I talk about later on. You know, just hold that for a second. But can I tell you that as I look at this text, I was still somewhat dissatisfied with the answer about looking back. Because Jesus said, and looking back. He didn't say turning back. He said looking back. Because if you turn back and go back, you go back to where you come from. But if you just look back, you're still moving. But the challenge is you can't see where you're going. So looking back is just as bad as turning back. Watch this now. I want to suggest to you that when you put your hands on the plow, it's because God has placed this plow in your hand, and it's a valuable apparatus that you need, and he's entrusted you with it because there's hard ground that needs to be plowed, and he wants certain soils turned over. And if he puts it in your hand, watch what he's done. You yourself, watch this, will encounter some hard soil. You will encounter some hard ground. Let me say it again. If he puts it in your hand, you're the one who's going to encounter the hard ground. And many of us have hands, but we don't have our hand on the plow. And the reason we don't have a hand on the plow is because everybody who has hands don't have the will to plow. They don't have the stamina to plow. In other words, everyone who have hands doesn't have what it takes to plow the hard ground. In other words, everybody can't handle the ridicule. Everybody can't handle the abuse. Everybody can't handle the backbiting. They can't handle the lies told on you. They can't handle the folks doing things to you. No, everybody can't handle that. They can't keep going through this hard ground with all this stuff around and still do what God has called them to do. Everybody can't put their hand on the plow because everybody's not qualified to plow. Because when the ground gets too hard, they want to let it go. God said if you put your hand on the plow and take your hand off the plow, you are not fit for the kingdom of heaven. That's why you got to leave some folk behind. And when you leave them behind, stop looking behind at them.
All right.
That's why you left them, so you didn't have to see them anymore. That's why you keep on moving, because you don't want to see them anymore. And I looked at this text, and I've got to be careful because I look at my movement, because when I look at my movement, I begin to consider this looking back thing, because it keeps getting me that why Jesus would say what he says. But I understand something, because when I consider looking back as opposed to looking forward, I'm already having a debate in my mind as to why do I want to look back when I know what's in front of me. And not that I can see what's in front of me, but I know Jesus is in front of me. So I got to debate with myself to determine why do I want to look back? What is back there that's so much? Because I'm having this private conversation. I'm having this private debate with myself, because I need to understand why do I want to look back? And why do I want to look behind me when I know that Jesus wants me to follow him? And I have this debate because there's something going on inside me. And I'm going to ask myself, what is so valuable for me to keep looking behind me when I know that Jesus is in front of me? The question is, why do I do that? Because I need to understand, why do you keep looking behind you when Jesus is in front of you? What is so valuable to you that you got to have what's behind you? I don't understand that, because if what's behind you is more valuable than Jesus in front of you, then turn around and go back.
Amen.
But you understand that, but I still need to understand Jesus makes such a statement about this looking back. Why does he respond with such sharpness? Is he suggesting that it's okay to turn around and go back, but it's not okay to look back? Yeah, and maybe he is. Maybe he's saying because you turn around and go back, you've already made that decision anyway, and I don't need you. But if you're going to do the work, you can't be half-stepping. You got to be real with the holding this plow. You can't be partially here and partially, they talk. In other words, you can't be straddling the fence. It's either you're going with me or you're not. He said it earlier. He said either you're with me or you're against me. I didn't read the whole text, but you didn't read the whole text because the disciples said, Lord, why don't you do like Elijah did? Why don't you rain down fire on them and burn them? He said, hold up. I didn't come to destroy man. I came to save man. So then I want to suggest to you, watch this now, because I'm asking myself, am I qualified? Only after I put my hand on the plow, not to look back. Because I don't touch the plow, can I look back? Because he says, if you put your hand on the plow and look back, you're not fit. So if I never put my hand on the plow, then I don't have anything to worry about. So the qualification is, if I put my hand on the plow. I want to suggest to you that placing your hand on the plow is co-signing to the work of the kingdom. And so when you do that, you said, I'm going to do it. And once you sign to do the work of the kingdom and you turn back, it's reprehensible. You can't tell you're going to follow God and put the hand on what God has ordained you to do and turn your back on God, because he's already co-signed you and he's ordained you to do what he's called you to do. So now you turn your back on God. You're not turning your back on the people. You turn your back on God. Yes. Jesus is looking for disciples, and he's not looking for onlookers. He's looking for someone who's going to plow the field of people, who's going to reach out and grab the ones who need saving. He's looking for the ones who don't mind holding back themselves in order to give themselves to others. I decided that it's more important to follow Jesus. And when you listen to what these men said, you may say that they had valid reasons for going back, to bury the dead, to talk to the family. You know, I think it's okay. But what they perceive, Sister Bess, to be a reason for turning were really not a reason. They were merely excuses. And Jesus immediately shot them down. He says the church was being built, and there was nothing more important than building the church. You got to decide whether you want to be a kingdom builder or a kingdom killer. God help me tonight. Either you want to be with Jesus or you want to be against Jesus. But watch this. Jesus' sharp answer comes as a response to what they perceive as a reason. Is burying your father more important than following me? Jesus said, they buried the dead. Why would you want to participate in burying the dead when you have the opportunity to participate in creating life? Why would you want to be a part of a dead church when you can be a part of a live church? And if you want to live, you got to follow Jesus. If you want to die, then you stay where you are. The question asks, why was Jesus so rude? It seemed like he was rude when he said what he said. I need to understand this because everything else except for following Jesus to Jesus was irrelevant. It didn't have value. Every time you look back, you really don't want to follow him. What's behind you is more important than what's in front of you. And I begin to understand that when you put your hand on the plow, somebody gets left behind. When you put your hand on the plow, somebody has to be forsaken. And friends and loved ones and cousins and family members have to leave. Can I tell you, one once you step out with your hand on the plow, somebody's going to get angry. Somebody's going to get upset. Somebody's going to be unhappy. But the ground's going to be tough. But you can't look back if you want to go forward, because everybody's not going to be with you plowing this ground, because everybody is not ready for the plowing of the hard ground. They want the ground to remain hard, because you realize when the ground is no longer hard, it calls you to step and slide a little bit. Things begin to sink just a little bit when the ground begins to get a little soft. But the key is you can't sow your seed unless the ground is plowed. You got to loosen up the dirt. In fact, to make it simple, you can't drive your car 45 miles an hour looking back without crashing. You can't plow the ground for Jesus looking back. If the church you're leaving is dead, and you want to revive it, there needs to be a revival. There needs to be a resurrection. Jesus is the only one who can resurrect. While some churches can be revived by CPR, everybody's not qualified to administer CPR. That's why he said you to put your hand on the plow and take your hands off means you're not fit. I want to tell you today to hold on to the plow. Keep your hands on the plow. Don't look back. And I think Bishop T.D. Jakes said it best when he says, stop trying to save what God is trying to keep. You got to let some stuff go. In other words, you got to understand that if you step in a river, the river is flowing. And if you step in that river, you can never step in the same water twice, because it keeps on moving. What am I trying to say? You can't go back to where you come from and expect it to be the same. You can't recreate your own past if you want a future that is prosperous. So you got to soften the ground. I can change the texture of the ground if I keep plowing. And if I keep plowing, change is going to come. And I discovered that nothing on earth is more permanent than change. Let me see that. In other words, the future has the privilege to arrive without announcing itself. Change has the privilege to show up without announcing itself. President Dwight Eisenhower said like this: neither a wise man nor a brave man lies on the track of history and wait for the train of the future to run them over. In other words, you can't stand where you are and expect the future to take you with you. The future is going to run over you and smash you and leave you where you stand. And that's why you got to keep your hand on the plow. Don't look back, because success sometimes looks too much like change. People are afraid of success because it looks too much like change. But when I look back, I lose the sight of Jesus. When I look back, I'm reminded of my failures. When I look back, I see my past. But when I look back, I can't see where I'm going, and I realize that if Jesus is in front of me, I'm missing out on Jesus. You got to keep your eyes on the prize, and Paul helps us understand that the prize is Christ Jesus. But the real problem is, watch this, and I'm asking myself, well, why was Jesus so rude to these people? What was he trying to say? And I believe it wasn't the problem that they was turning back. It wasn't that they were taking their hand off the plow. It wasn't that even you looking back. I believe the problem was that Jesus was saying to them, you got too many excuses. Too many excuses not to follow me. The real problem is excuses not to follow Jesus. And when I look back, I stopped. Because I stopped following Jesus. I stopped depending on Jesus. And when I look back, I look for excuses to stop. The problem is it was all because of excuses. Jesus said, if you got too many excuses, you aren't fit for the kingdom of God, because you're going to have some challenges along the way, because the ground is going to be hard, and for you to plow that ground, you're going to have some conflicts, and you're going to have some challenges, some people who are not going to like you, who's going to ridicule you, who's going to knock you down. You're going to fall down a few times behind that plow, and every now and then that mule is going to get away from you. You got to chase that mule. But if you keep on holding on to the plow, don't look back, because if you look back and the mule is getting away from you, you're going to miss out on the mule. He said there's too many excuses, and these excuses are going to stop your blessing. Too many excuses, they're going to displease God, and they're going to cause you to lose your way. And too many excuses are going to cause you to look back. Too many excuses will cause you to forfeit your future. You can't have your future if you keep looking back.
Amen.
So, looking back is more tragic than turning around. And the challenge is, as Doc says, your past is calling you, but you don't have to return to it. Don't give the power to the thing you're looking at behind you. Because every time you look back, you give it power. But keep your hands on the plow, and don't worry about what's behind you. Because what's behind you, if it's not good, don't worry about it. Don't worry about what's behind you, God. I looked at it this way because I began to think about what was behind me. And the things I thought that was behind me was the stuff I went through, and how the challenges I had. And I don't want to go through that no more. But then I realized something. Because David helped me out in the 23rd Psalm. He says this thing. He said, goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life. If I keep my hands on the plow and follow Jesus, I don't worry about what's behind me, because goodness and mercy is behind me. And as long as goodness and mercy is behind me, I'm going to be all right. Because I found out that Jesus is my Prince of Peace. He is my wheel in the middle of the wheel. He is the lily of the valley. He is the bright and shining star. He's my Jehovah. He's my Jehovah Rapha, my El Shaddai. He's my Elohim. He's my more than enough. He's my Prince of Peace. He's my Jehovah Rapha. He heals me when I need him. Somebody said he's Jehovah Jireh. He's a great provider. He's Jehovah Nissi. He's the one who fights my battle. Why worry about what's behind me? Because Jesus is going to take care of it. Because he is my Jehovah Nissi. He is my battle fighter. And he gives me joy for my sorrow.
Yes, thank you, God.
So don't worry about what's behind me. He gives me hope for my tomorrow, and he washed away my pain, and he turned my midnight into day. So why am I worried about what's behind me? Stop looking back and keep your eyes on Jesus. Put your hand on the plow.
Amen.
And if you do that, everything will be all right. Jesus is the way. He is the way. He tells us, as he talked to the disciples, that nobody comes to the Father but by me. So if that's what your desire is, to be with Jesus, to go to the Father, you need to ensure that you keep your eyes on him. Peter has helped us understand, as he was trying to walk on water, as long as he kept his eyes on Jesus, he was able to walk on that water. But when he turned to see what was behind from the wind, he began to sink. If you don't want to sink, if you don't want to fall, if you don't want to go through stuff alone, you need to keep your hands on the plow. But understand this. It doesn't mean that you won't have some trials and tribulations. Doesn't mean that you won't face some rough times. That you won't have some bad folk coming at you. That you won't go through some challenges. But what it does mean, in his word, he said, I will never leave you or forsake you. That while you're going through it, I'm there with you. Amen?
Amen.
We're going to give God some praise.